How you doing, everybody? It's still the 21st, Thursday of January 2010, and it's sort of coming up to 8:30 in the evening, and I just wanted to talk about something. I was recently up to Northern Ireland visiting my family for the holidays, and I met an old friend of mine. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he's an engineer off the boats, alright, a mechanical engineer. So he's all his life he's been servicing engines and fixing up the parts that make the ship go forward. That's what he's into, and but he's one of these guys who can put his hand in it. He's a nice fella, and because he spent so much of his time on his own, when he meets you and he hasn't seen you in a while, he wants to. It's a big celebration type thing. So anyway, I ended up in his house. We had a couple of drinks, and we had a cup of tea, and we were just talking about life, and we were talking about pension funds. I don't know how this came up, but we were talking about pension funds, and he went off and he got this little leather case, and he opened it up for me, and inside it was fascinating. So as I've told you, this man is 59 now, and he retired about 7 years ago. He was 52 at the time, and his wife got ill. And he decided he wanted to come home. Lives outside Belfast. He wanted to come home, look after his wife, and pay off his mortgage, a small mortgage, or the remnants of a mortgage, give a few bob to his children, and just take life a bit easier. And he had been sort of running around these bloody ports and up and down the Pacific and all around. Did a lot of runs to America and all that sort of stuff. Dreadful, very, very lonely existence. Anyway, he was telling me he wrote this company, and they agreed in principle. So they give him a small golden handshake, and he gets a small pension, all right, from the company, which he's delighted. So he lives off the pension. And he'll get that until he's 65, and then what will happen is they'll stop that pension, and his own pension will kick in. And 7 years ago, he had built up in his pension £168,000. Okay, and there've been never any big gains. It just paddled along, and it made a couple of percent every year, whatever. I don't know how much he put into it, but it was obviously a considerable amount of money every year, because he would have been paid a good salary and all the rest. But anyway, 7 years ago, there was £168,000 in the fund, and he wanted to find out if he could get his hands on any of it, and they agreed eventually. The pension crowd agreed, a crowd in London, all right. They were the administrators of the pension fund for the shipping line. They agreed that they would give him half of the money if he invested the rest of it and left it in the existing pension fund, and then when he was 65 he could draw down an annuity, alright, an annual thing every year. Okay, so that's what he agreed. So he ended up with 84,000, and he had to pay tax on that, because he obviously, it's tax exempt when you make the deductions and you pay it into these pension funds. So you had to pay tax. I don't know, it was 15 or 16,000, something like that, to the British Exchequer, and then he was left with the remainder for himself. So he ended up with 68 grand or something like that, and he'd given the other 84,000, left it in the pension fund. Okay, and he was showing me there before Christmas, he got the letter in December, in early December, from the pension fund, telling him that his pension fund now was worth 39,000. So it went from 84,000 down to 39,000, something less than 39,000. So he lost about 56% of it, something like that. Okay, and then he was laughing because he had this bag, and it was like a little sort of like a cloth bag, like something you'd see at a Robin Hood, and inside it were all these gold coins, solid gold coins. And he poured them out on the little table we were having a cup of tea at. And he said, "Have you ever seen those before?" And I said, "Yeah, they're Krugerrands. I have seen them before. They're the Krugerrands, South African Krugerrands." He said, "Yeah." He said, "What I decided to do was," he said, "I came home, and he said, I thought with the I went on a bit of a holiday with my wife, and when we come home, I didn't know what I was going to do. So he said, I bought a couple of books on economics, and I went down to the library, the local library." I said, and I looked up a few economics books, and I decided I'm going to invest in gold. So what he did was, for every month he bought a Krugerrand, gold Krugerrand, and they averaged out in price something like, I think, between 5 and 550. So he told me the price, but I forget what it was. But it was around between $500 and $600 dollars. All right, I don't know. He bought them from somebody in Europe somewhere, some of the gold dealer or some of the coin dealers. Okay, and he just wired the man the money, and the guy sent him in a registered package the little coin every month. He ended up with 74 of them, and we were laughing because he was saying, "Isn't it extraordinary? Here I am. I've ended up. This gold is worth 2.5 times what I paid for it. At least 2.5 times what I paid for it. And this pension fund that I've been paying into all my life, it's gone. Well, a big section of it's gone. A huge section of it. You never see it again." And I thought to myself, yeah, how incongruous. Like, what a world we live in. What an extraordinary fucking world we live in. Here's a man who's done nothing but work all his life on boats, moving stuff around for commerce, alright, and possibly for industry, mostly for commerce probably, and on the seas and getting, you know, and no family life or any of that stuff, just for a lonely out existence. And he gives this money to these gobshites 7 years ago, and it's just 56% of it, like, it's gone. And I thought to myself, I was looking at the portfolio. He came with a portfolio, you know, the advice slip that they send you, and the two things that caught my eye were, number one, the percentages in the portfolio were the bulk of the investments that they dealt in were equities, and then property, and then treasuries. That was number one. And then the other thing that caught my eye were transactional fees. On the heading, you know, they had an account for what they'd taken out every year. It was number one. That was their fees. Their fees were taken. No letter of apology, no explanation, no nothing. Just take it or leave it. This is life, and this is life, and life is fucking brutal. And when you see something like that, be under no illusion. It is really brutal, because that's your money. And when you give your money over to somebody else like that, you can literally kiss it goodbye. You have no control over it. You can't say anything about it. You can't do anything about it. And I just thought about the people who administer those funds and what they would have been like for him. And in the main, they're all young people. The bosses of those departments, they'd be in various departments, and it would be an adjunct of a bank. Normally, all these pension funds are adjuncts of a bank. They normally are. Okay, they're rarely a thing on their own. They're normally adjuncts of banks. And as I say, all they're concerned about is, it doesn't matter whether or not the investment goes up, goes down, or stays the same. It's an irrelevancy. Once they do the transaction, once they buy it, they get a fee, and once they sell it, they get a fee. And the more they buy and the more they transact, the more fees they build up. And that's just the way of it. That's the way of life. And that's your life. That part of that is that man's life. And it's just been pissed up against the wall by these. What they are is they're like the mafia. They're like they're well-educated hoods. That's all they are. They're thugs. That's all they are. And the law, this LAW, supports them. You try and do anything or say anything or interfere with that whole process in any way, and it comes up in front of the law, and see what happens with you. See what happens. You'll fucking get 2 years or 18 months. It would be like a GBH you'd get. That's what you'd get. But this man's money was gone. Their transactional fees weren't gone. Oh no. Number one, transactional fees. And as I say, no letter of apology, no. But that was just the insight into their world. Alright? But the main thing was, an ordinary man, read a couple of books, and he had enough common sense and enough foresight to put his money into gold, the money he had into gold, into something that was worthwhile, tangible, and of merit. And I thought to myself, we really are in a strange world. The fucking lunatics are running the asylum. Talk more.